All right.
Thanks.
So I'm going to start, right?
Yes.
Okay. So my name's Hélène Fraser, and this is my colleague Keith Doyle.
Hello.
We're from Emily Carr University in Vancouver, Canada, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about the work we have been doing for the last 4 years or so together. Keith and I have been collaborating for quite a while before that as well. So Fuid Discourse in Design Studio Pedagogy. Sorry, that's
okay. Sorry.
Okay. So to start off with, just to give you a little bit of background, Keith's work is in material practice, and mine originally was in fashion. Both of us teach in the industrial design faculty at Emily Carr. And one of the things that Keith and I have consistently done when we work together is really working in terms of assembly and collaborative work. Always find ourselves in this kind of generative research space, and oftentimes working with our peers, which is a very interesting thing because although we're all creatives, we have very different ways of going about different creative spaces. We consistently seem to use spaces of repost and response to enable us to kind of get through different creative problem spaces. They're often fairly abstract. And one of the things that comes out of the kind of collaborative work that we do is this need for agility. And also at times to know when we actually have to slow down and listen to what people have to say. The slides I was just showing were from a case study that we did about 3 years ago on art and design research practices at Emily Carr. And probably one of the main takeaways we got from that particular project was that that roles are not always clear, and as we assume, and that we have to let go a bit sometimes. In addition to the work that we do in terms of our own research practices, of course, we're teaching. And this is an image of a school in North Vancouver that's is a private school for kids with learning differences. And I have had a class of industrial design students going in there we're now at year 5, collaborating with this particular school. The key thing about it is that we have industrial design students, second years, working with kids who are round about the ages of 8 to 10. It fits into our curriculum. We teach them co-creative practice, but probably the most important thing is the project itself, which looks at developing interactive learning tools for children. And what comes out of that is kind of a switch in roles, because the children actually end up teaching our industrial design students how to be creative and about their own process in and of itself. So this insight goes in many directions, and it's really allowed, at least from my part, to really think about the porous nature of knowledge acquisition and what it means to collaborate. Within Emily Carr, over the last 4 years, at least since I've been there, there's been a concerted effort to do a lot of design-based research, which is exterior to the curriculum work that we do. And there's a lot of variety in terms of how we approach it. This particular project, Clothing as Conversation, started in 2011. We have funding, we just received a hefty amount of funding to go through till 2017. And it's essentially a project that is faculty run, in fact, with Keith and myself, that's rethinking the assumptions about our assumptions about clothing in terms of how we design it, how we use it, and produce it and use it. What it's meant is that we've actually been able to bring students into a different type of knowledge acquisition space as research assistants. And I'm just going to go through a couple slides related to the types of work that our students are doing with us and for us. So looking at cultural probe-like activities, working through this, there were a whole series of conversations about clothing and conversation in coffee shops. The opportunity to network and to work with international researchers. The Local Wisdom was a international research network established by Kate Fletcher in London in the UK. And we had over 90 students involved in the curriculum, in the curricular activities with this particular project, as well as about 4 RAs. Our work in research also kind of extends into a lot of 3D printing and looking at hard-soft connections. Developing and thinking about legacy techniques in tension to digital. And it's funny, I saw the paperclip earlier. Actually, the paperclip is very important to me and really more than incidental. It's just, we also take the opportunity to hack a lot and ask our students to do that as well. So this is the from a whole series of clothing-based hacks that helped us through some of our research process. And I can't go into much detail about this, but a lot of our work is actually about completely rethinking the garment form and how it is actually produced and used, actually working off of a form that looks like a plus. This was an empathy study that I presented to the IDSA in August. So pulling students into a whole series of different types of research practices. And the key thing about this is it's outside of the curriculum, and they start to look at their role as designers and what that might mean in a very different way. It's a wonderful thing. It's also an amazing challenge for us. It changes the pace of how we actually work with the students. So there are times when we have students that are working with as RAs, they go back into the regular curriculum-based courses that we have, and we have to be very agile and adjust the way that we pull them in and along through their time with us at Emily Carr. And of course, all of this work is really about rethinking a lot of our assumptions about how we design. And technology plays a big role in that. I'm going to pass it off to Keith.
Great. Thanks. So technology does play a big role, and ever more in a contemporary sense. I mean, everybody is familiar with, I'm sure, in this room, that 3D printing has been around a long time. Vancouver is home to a kind of a healthy group of hardware developers invested in the technology and really taken with the kind of the premise or the promise of a personalized production platform. So are we. We're really quite excited about it. We brought together a group of researchers, faculty, and students over lunch as kind of an open invitation, an ad hoc meetup group, starting off as we had the bandwidth once a week, moving towards a bi-weekly kind of session to really think about what are we going to do with it. So as we all know or have experienced with research, sometimes failures are brilliant successes. And as Hélène alluded to earlier or mentioned earlier, our real first step was to kind of jump into the open source and look at the kind of open architecture and see if we can find some benefit towards printing and incorporating textiles. So our students eagerly, like I said, jumped in. And if anybody's ever worked with a RepRap, you know there's quite an investment and quite a feeling of success when you do receive something out of the end of this thing, like this, which is a PLA printed directly onto a coated nylon. Well, this really serves as a foundation for further explorations in feedstock, where students and researchers and faculty have all worked together, as I mentioned earlier, with this meetup group, serving as a bit of a ad hoc advisory panel for direction. So here we have us kind of unpacking an open source recipe, which was take a little bit of this, add a little bit of that, and here you go, off and running. So right here in the front is the commercial, the next step over where you see the 100. That is our replicant. Again, we're looking for a cost-effective material. Anybody that's worked with 3D printing, and of course it's been around for a very long time, in the kind of enterprise level technologies, it's really quite costly. Right here in the front, on my right, your left, is the commercial powder, around $50 a pound. Our first attempt at a replicant, 50 cents a pound. So we see this as a great benefit to the school, to the students, as we get to kind of jump in and leverage that technology in an industrial kind of setting. We can, now print, this is for us at Emily Carr, of course, we can now print a complex mold, cast it in the foundry, and have a true life replicant in about, I think, 4 days or less from the digital file. We've taken that and spun it out in a little more complex form. And also this has come into play with partnerships in industry. So this drawing, this line drawing, is a copy of a Randall truck, which is a longboard reverse kingpin wheel hanger. It has not seen significant change in about 20 years, really. We worked with a local company in Vancouver, located in a shed on the North Shore. They have about 40% of the longboard skateboard market, and we worked with them to replicate in True Life Materials again a series of iterations on that hardware. Now, I have to jump back to the kind of the meetup group, as that was moving along as we were going here and having quite an impact on direction of the material research. The students were involved through volunteerism, through active research assistant positions, and we kind of grew. We outgrew our lunch meeting and quickly realized that we needed to kind of carry this forward because there was a collective intelligence at play here that could not only serve us as far as knowledge intake, but also outreach. So the Material Matters 3D print forums took off about 2 years ago. To date, we've run 15, I'd say, unique presentations and workshops, catering to, again, the local kind of keen interest in entrepreneurship, individuals, alumni there, service technology providers, Don Reed of 3D Systems, and early adopters. This is John Beeler, co-founder of one of the nation's, one of Canada's largest social groups concerned with 3D printing. Faculty like Justin Novak and Hélène as well. Okay.
So we're going to finish up really quickly. We have a last slide that has all of our collaborators that we work with, and I guess a message and kind of thinking in terms of what this means for larger collaborations. The thing that we've realized is that it is a very messy process. What we've showed you is a very small portion of the type of collaborative work we do, and it extends from this very basic research to places where we're working with industry in applied settings. And the one thing that we have realized is that the necessity to be agile and to really pay attention to what people are saying to us as we're moving forward is really key in order to actually facilitate the types of spaces we're getting, and incredibly rewarding. Keith and I were arguing because this slide looks really nice. There's all these logos, and I wanted a big web mess of marks all over the top of it, but then, of course, you wouldn't be able to see the logos. So I guess finishing off just saying it's a great process, and that's our bit. Thank you.
Thanks.